wanted to name a couple things you're doing really well. I don't know if you've seen your Teach Boost ratings, but you graded proficient or higher on 2C culture of achievement. You were super consistent with setting clear expectations and holding kids accountable. I've noticed you've been doing a lot of the quick redo, which has been really helpful with getting 100%. So nice work. Also, you had a huge increase in your data, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
You were at 66, 44, 32 for the mid-module. So you were 23 points higher on the approaches. I forget exactly how much on the meets, I should have written it down. And you met the advanced goal. So that's excellent. What do you think led to that success?
Well, one, I think it was helpful, like, starting in person and, like, seeing where they were, and, like, especially during the student debrief, where I'm, like, able to walk to them and, like, support them, do more one-on-one. And I do think that our review day was very helpful, having that review day to go over the things that were going to be on the test. And I think, like, our preparation prior to that, when we had that math internalization day, or we, like, just shared ideas, and you like discuss, like, the how to do it, like that I could do it on Pear Deck, I could print it out, and all these different things. So I think that time with us three together was very helpful as well.
Good to know. Yeah, we can definitely keep doing that going forward, because I agree. I thought you were super intentional with planning the review and using your observations and your data to determine, like, where to spend your time on the review, and your results were good. And every time you improved, so keep going. So today for our coaching meeting, I wanted to focus, I can't speak, it's been a long week. Wanted to focus on creating a strong exemplar. I noticed when I was giving you feedback on your lesson plans this week that the student work was completed, but it didn't fully reflect the entire scope of the strategy. And then when I observed your lessons today and looked at student work, I noticed that, like today in Mrs. Harris's class, 8 out of 12 kids either had incorrect responses or nothing on their paper when you prompted them to skip count. And then in Mr. Gainey's class today, there were 4 out of 8 who only had work on their paper after you told them to copy what you did on the board. So we're going to focus on making sure that we have a strong exemplar that fully reflects the scope of the strategy, because that'll help you model for kids, but also help you when you're looking at their work to make sure that they're on track. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I want you to take a look at this. That's your lesson for Monday.
Okay.
Think about, like, what you know, what is strong about this, and how is it different or the same from what you're currently doing?
Okay, so the similarities are just continuing to use the place value discs and correctly place them under the place, like the unit, like the specific unit that they're under. The difference is, like, what's here at the bottom, the addition, the 10 plus 100 plus 10 plus 9. But I think that just shares, like, in more detail, right? Like, it's just going more in depth.
Yeah, and how will that be helpful?
Well, it helps the why, I guess. Like, remember how you shared how next time ask, or how, like, how do you know? So then, and I guess, like, my question is, like, I've been doing, like, I've been asking them to tell me what they have on their place value chart and represent it by unit from greatest unit to smallest unit, and so they represent that, and then they tell me the value. So does that?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, I guess my push for you is to make sure that when you're creating the student exemplar, you're clear not only on the output, but also on the process, because that's what I've noticed where, like, student thinking is breaking down. So thinking through, like, when a kid approaches any problem that looks like that, what is the process that they will go through in order to craft this exemplar work?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I know it's like 4 to 10 on a Friday, and thinking is
these
tough.
3 steps, like, okay. So this is their process, like our process, right? Like.
Yeah. So those would be like the procedural steps.
Oh, okay.
So first, kids would draw. Then, if they have 10 or more in any place, regroup, and then record in expanded form. Because I know before you mentioned, and you've been consistent with this in your execution, put it in standard form. Put the numbers in the same form, and that's right. I think what I'm noticing as the gap in student work is that kids aren't clear how to get from point A to point B. Are you noticing something similar? Or maybe they can, but they're not clear about the how or the why.
Okay.
So my push for you would be anytime you're creating exemplar student work, make sure you're using the same strategies that you would expect to see from your students. And I know we've talked before about how like Mrs. Harris's class is lower. So you might have some students who can do it mentally. Put yourself into the shoes of like a medium-low student and do the work that way so that you're able to better support kids in the moment because you've already kind of gone through that thought process.
Okay.
And then identify priority problems. So if you notice on the work that you have in front of you, this is just a photocopy of it. There are problems that are circled because those mirror the work that kids have to do on the exit ticket. So I know like pacing is tough because you've got a very short amount of time to teach. So having those priority problems identified will help you tell kids like, oh, we only have 10 minutes for this practice. Everybody do D and E first.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
And then if you look at the exit ticket, those are just the transferable, like the how that we were talking about earlier. So what do kids need to do and how will they do it? So based on what we just discussed, we're going to do a little bit of work on this together, but your action step is going to be, and I'll send this to you via TeachBoost, write the exemplar and set the bar for student excellence by completing the work using the strategies that kids will use in the lesson. So that's the what. What will students do? Then identify and script out the thinking steps. So how will students use the strategy? And then the third thing would be to identify those priority problems based on the assessment or potential misconceptions. Cool. So let's look at lesson 19 together. And I actually printed yours so we can just go off the words. Maybe I'll type yours. And then, oh, there it is. Nope. Okay. So here's the problem set for lesson 19. Alright. So let's take a moment to first think about what is the strategy that kids are using.
So they're adding more to the number that is being given to them. It's an example of either adding 110 or one more, or 110 or one less. So that's what they're doing in the first problem, and this is where the practice of greater than or less than also goes into play, where they use that sentence of and that foundation of like the number that is less than, like just using that number is less than, the number given is less than the number that's like either 100 more or 10 more or one more. and giving the answer of that prompt.
Mhm. Okay, so expand on that. You said adding or showing one more or one less. How will they do that?
So adding one more.
Mm-hmm. Keep going.
Okay.
So adding one more. What do kids need to know and do in order to add one more?
So they need to have, they need to know which number they're going to start, like which number they're going to add to.
Mm-hmm.
So having that, and then adding whether 100 more, 10 more, or one more, and being able to add like the different numbers, because it's not the same as adding to 1 as it is like to 10.
Correct.
So like knowing that you add 10 in the 10th place. and
Yeah,
100
that's it.
in the 100th
That's
place.
what I was looking for. Right. So I heard you say that the strategy that kids are using is they're either adding to show more or subtracting to show less. And then the how piece, when we're adding one more, the digit in the ones place increases by 1. How can we use that same thinking to show when we're showing less than? So if we're showing 1 less, what would kids need to know and understand?
That it's, well, instead of adding the one more, you can take away
Mhm.
one less,
Mhm.
and take away one less.
Yeah.
Or 10 less, or 100 less.
Right. So if we're showing 1 less, the digit in the ones place decreases by 1.
Okay.
And so that's like the process that kids need to think about as they're going through this work. So if I were completing the work, as a kid, first I would ask myself, am I showing more or less? The problem tells me I'm showing more. Great, that means I'm adding. Then I need to look at how many more. 100. What place is changing? The hundreds place. Will it go up or go down? It'll go up because I'm showing 100 more. So my starting number is 242. 100 more than that would be 342.
Okay.
So that's the thought process that a kid would go through. And then the same thing for the next one. What's my starting number? 242. What place is changing? The hundreds place. Will it increase or decrease? Decrease. So 1 less 100 is 142.
Okay.
How can you apply that to 10 more and 10 less?
So same thing.
Mhm.
Look at the first number.
Mhm.
So it would be, you start at 242.
Mhm.
Still, the next thing you want to do is which number is changing.
Which place is changing?
Which place is changing.
Yeah.
So now we see that we're working with our 10th place
Mhm.
this time. We look next to it. Is it more or less?
Mhm.
If it's more, then we're adding. That means the number is increasing.
Mhm.
So increase from 4, you increase 1 more, and it's 5.
Yep. I need 2 backwards. Oops, I totally messed that up. That's okay. Cool. Okay. Now apply it to 10 less.
So again, we start at 242, and we see that we're working with the similar place value, or we're still working with tens. Next, we're looking to see, are we increasing or decreasing?
Mhm.
Well, less means to decrease, so then we're going to decrease 10. So decrease 1 from 4,
Mhm.
and it's 232.
Yeah.
Okay. Same thing with 1.
Yeah, same thing as 1. So thinking about that process that you went through, how can we put that in a way that's transferable? So what are the thinking steps that kids would use every time they see a problem like this? What do they do first?
Look at the problem.
Mhm.
Look at the place value.
Mhm. So look at the starting number. Then what?
Look at what your, so I would, like, I guess, if I'm missing the term for that, like look at the place value that you're going to either add or decrease,
Yeah.
increase or decrease from?
Yeah, so I think we can say look at what place will change.
Okay.
Then what?
Then the third step is you're looking at more or less and defining whether if you have more, you increase. If it says more, you increase. If it says less, you decrease.
Yes.
Or it decreases.
So if you start thinking about the process, every time you're creating your student exemplar, what impact do you think it'll have on your kids and on your teaching?
It'll support student. It'll help them work more independently, like get to that process more. It'll help them get to the process, and it'll build that skill to work on that independently, and it'll help me understand where the students are if I'm doing that, and how I can like bridge that gap or like scaffold that idea so that they're able to do it after I share that thinking.
Great. Awesome. So let's practice one more time, and then we'll close out. That way you can walk away with your how steps for each of your lessons for next week. So here's your problem set for lesson 20. Let's take a look at that.
Okay.
So think about the work that you did. What thinking do students need to engage in order to solve those problems?
Okay, so then for number one, what it's asking us is 1 more than 39. We begin with 1 more. We see the place value first. And so we understand that, okay, our 1's place is going to change. Now after we see whether it's going to increase or decrease. So when we see that it's more than, we know we're increasing. Now then we're given the actual number. So this looks a little bit different from
lesson 19?
From lesson 19 only by the steps. In this case, students are doing the same steps, but in different, they're doing the step, but they're doing it in, like, differently. First they're comparing the place value and such. And then they find the total. This is important because they need to understand what's changing, whether the 110 or the 100th is changing. So they see that they're working the tens place when they have the 2 digits. And is there something I'm missing?
No, you're not. You're right. So I agree with you. I think the thinking process is very similar to what we just did with lesson 19, because we're still asking, I'm going to refer back to the steps we created together. So we look at our starting number. It's 39. We still have that starting number. Then we need to look at what place is changing. This is a 1, so the 1's place is going to change. Do I need to show more or less? We need to show more. That means we're adding. But then there's the added complexity here of the regrouping piece, right? So 9 plus 1 is 10. We can't have 10 ones, so now we need to make a new 10. So there's that piece. And here, it's the same thing, right? So we made a 10. That goes into the next step. Here, it's the same thing. The 10's place is changing. 9 tens plus 1 10 is 10 tens. We can't have 10 tens, so we need to regroup and make 100.
Okay, so a big component is the regrouping, identifying the regrouping.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the same thing here is for this one.
Yes. We don't have enough to subtract, so what do we need to do?
Regroup.
Yeah. The regrouping understanding is so essential for 2nd grade. If kids can walk out of second grade understanding that when we add, if there are 10 or more in any place, we regroup and make the next largest unit. And when we subtract, if we don't have enough to subtract, we decompose and a large unit into smaller units. It will set them up for much more success in third grade because they don't spend too much time in third grade on that strategy. They just expect them to know it.
Okay.
So kids need to walk out of second grade being able to add and subtract with regrouping fluently up to 3-digit numbers.
How can they regroup this visually? Like, how can I explain this visually?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm gonna go to the board.
There's a whiteboard on in their buckets.
Use that.
For this one?
Yep, so 120. So if kids are not super solid on regrouping, I recommend going back to the pictorial. So have them show their starting number. I have 100, 2 10s, 0 ones. But I need to take away a 1. So first I need to get some ones. I'm going to cross off a 10, draw my arrow to the ones place, draw my 10 ones. Now I can cross off a 1, and then I'm going to do exactly what I did on lesson 18. I have 100, 9 ones. My answer is 119.
I'm seeing a lot of scholars are having a difficulty adding. Like, very few understand that 100 plus, like, one will stay in the hundreds place. And this 0 plus 1, because they're both in the tens place, you add 0 plus 1 and it becomes 1. So I feel like that's something that is missing.
So you can help them understand that by prompting, like, what is the value of this? And then connecting it to uniform. How many hundreds? Oh, 1.
Okay.
How many tens? 1. How many ones? 9.
So I can't explain it like that.
You can't explain
okay.
it like
I didn't
that.
know if there was a way that it was taught previously that I needed to follow, like.
No, you're fine explaining it that way because this is the value, this is the quantity. And that's okay. It's okay if you connect it that way. For
Okay.
sure.
So just saying like how many hundreds? 1, 0, and then I usually like underline 0 and
Yeah.
1. 0, add 1 more. 1. 9, well, 0 and 9.
Yeah.
9.
Yeah, we have 0 ones, or 0 tens here, 1 10 here. So 0 tens plus 1 10 is 1 10. We have 0 ones here, 0 ones here, 9 ones here. 0 ones plus 0 ones plus 9 ones is 9 ones.
Okay.
The hide 0 cards are also super helpful. They're in your Eureka kit. They look like this. You may have seen them. But if you have them out and like lay them on your place value chart and then push them together, it helps illustrate that for kids.
Okay.
Yeah. And then regrouping, so if you were showing 10 less or 100 less, can I actually see an example? So let's see. 10 more than 598 is 608. Same way, show your starting number. There's my 600s. Oops, 500. There's my, this one's a little bit tricky because we need to figure out what we're adding.
For D, 10 more.
Yeah, D. So
Oh,
our
okay.
starting number is 598. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So then here, they would need to just know, basically, that 1 more 10 now becomes 100. We have 600, 0 10s, 8 ones. And I think that's how you have kids recording it now.
We haven't started that yet, so I think these next lessons will emphasize the regrouping.
Yeah, and if you, did I bring it? I think either using the whiteboards and having kids represent pictorially first, especially if you haven't really done much with regrouping, will be super helpful, or printing out place value charts and have them record and show their work there.
So like, okay. So they can get like there's a template with the place value chart. Are you suggesting that maybe just have that in their cubbies to already have the place value
or
chart?
even just create, and I think Andrew created one last year, so I can look to see if he has one, but it was just like a blank piece of paper, and he just had a bunch of small place value charts. So one for each problem. And he had them, like, for number 1, here's where you record your work. For number 2, here's where you record your work.
Oh, I see.
I'm pretty sure I have it. I'll email it to you.
Oh, I see.
Because I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Today we worked on like having 2 place value charts, and it was kind of tricky for
Yeah. So maybe having that on the paper might be helpful. All right. I want to be respectful of your weekend. It is 29, so we can close out. So based on what we discussed, what is your next step or your action step?
So focus more on internalizing the problem sets and identifying the steps that students might think of when problem solving, and how to like punch and have those steps ready for to scaffold in my teaching.
Awesome.
In the lessons.
You nailed it. So next week when I give you feedback on your lesson plans, I'll look for those and I'll definitely support and coach you through them. And I'll check to make sure that your work completed as if you were a student. But please let me know if there's anything else I can do to support you, especially when I'm in your classroom, and just making sure that you are clear and supporting students through those same thinking steps.
If there's a way like that you think I'm explaining something and I can scaffold it more,
Sure.
I think if it works well for you, if you want to like just have a whiteboard and say like do X, Y, and Z.
I love the whiteboards. I'll definitely start using them more when I'm in your classroom. Do you want this?
Yes.
Awesome.